Welcome to the MakerCast. This is the official podcast of the Fandom Foundry, all about makers, the things they make, and the people who can learn from them. So once again, I'm Todd Oxtra, joined by Sean Nias, and we are joined by a special guest tonight. You can call him the Skoladiator. Aviator. Man, I'm getting that wrong, John.
The Skoladiator.
Skoladiator, buddy.
I know. I got through it. I mean, I knew it. And then, but you're also brand new to this. He is the owner of Third Dimension Prints and Promotional Products. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. But before we do, thank you, John, for coming on. It's so great to have you. You and I have been talking a little bit about coming on, and actually, I'll say the way we met was on the Twin Cities Geeks page, and you said, "Hey, does anybody have a sports podcast?" I'm like, "I do a fantasy football podcast," and then we just started talking. So
I'll tell you, Twin Cities Geeks is one of the coolest ways that I have found to continue to use Facebook in 2025.
Absolutely, it's the right tool for the right situation. So
there's so many circles within this large circle. It's sometimes it's overwhelming. But it's a great group. Like 33,000 people, I think, the last time I looked, maybe more.
And I was at Twin Cities Con, and they had a booth there just to introduce people, say who they are, and it was great. And I obviously, I'd like to connect with more
every community. Seriously, every community should be so lucky to have a community building resource as Twin Cities Geeks. It's incredible. Kudos to whoever runs that. I've never met them, but they do a great job.
Absolutely.
The part that I really appreciate about that is the ability to have conversations with folks about what they're building, what they're looking at, how they're able to use certain slicers to build 3D modeling. It's awesome.
Any creative outlet, honestly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like that.
At least just smaller groups. Like there's a 3D printing group. There's tons of them out there. So there's something for everybody. But enough about that. Now it's time for John to give us his geek origin story and how he became the geek he is today. So John, take it away.
Well, I mean, I was born in 1974. I spent really a lot of my formative years in the late 80s and early 90s. Like, I remember one of the few people, I mean, I know there's people around older than me, but I'm one of the few people who I talk to regularly, who I remember in 1979, when it turned to 1980, I was blown away that it didn't go 1977, 1978, 1979, 1970, 10. And so when I found out that it went from 79 to 80, I was mind blown. But so I spent a lot of my formative years then, like, with the real explosion of video games, in the, like, probably some of the peak years of comic books, Saturday morning cartoons, wrestling when Hulk Hogan, like, I remember AWA. For me, WWF, like, I didn't realize that, like, WWF bought out AW. I grew up watching AWA, and I was still pretty young then when that all happened. And, like, it just all of a sudden one day, all of my favorite wrestlers that used to come to, like, my school once a year to wrestle were now on WWF, and it was just getting bigger and bigger. But, like, those were all the people that I grew up watching. George the Animal Steele, Ravishing Rick Rude, Mean Gene Okerlund before, when he was the AWA announcer. So, like, that was kind of the era that I grew up in. And I think the reason that I've become so geeky is because a lot of those things have really evolved with technology. We've watched, like the Marvel universe explode with the storylines, not prior to our generation, but the storylines of our generation. So it's like, I don't know, the technology and nostalgia are, like, meeting at this perfect unison right now, where it's just like, pick a venue of ways that you grew up and how you can, like, zoom in on it and focus on it. So like those are probably my big things. And then obviously football, as we've talked a lot. I was mentioning earlier, but for football, for me, probably one of the biggest formative things for me going back to, and especially we talk about cartoons and wrestling, but the Chicago Bears, like I remember they were on every Saturday morning cartoon show you could figure out. They were Refrigerator Perry was in the ring wrestling with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and you know what I mean? So they were in all of those. Like I'm pretty sure I remember them making comic book appearances even. Like so a lot of those things were even intertwined back then, and now they've just become deeper holes to fall into.
Well, one thing that comes to mind for me regarding like Saturday morning cartoons, and you had, like Space Ghost, and you had the Hanna-Barbera, which hasn't really come to the forefront with like where Marvel is now. Those were like cornerstone things that you would watch in Saturday morning. And then with the Minnesota origins of wrestling, I mean, wrestling in Minnesota was huge.
I mean, it still has a very. I was into Minnesota independent wrestling scene right around the turn of the century. Steel Domain Wrestling, Mid American Wrestling, even a lot of promotions in like Wisconsin and Iowa and Illinois. I remember CM Punk having match after match after match with Horace the Psychopath in armory garages. And it's funny because I kind of fell off of WWE at the end of the Raw era, and I came back for a little bit in the early 2000s. And ironically, the first time that I turned on WWE after 5 or 6 years was the Monday Night Raw after CM Punk won his first heavyweight championship. And he came out kind of Jey Uso style now, like came out through the fans holding up the belt. And I looked on TV and I was just like, that's CM Punk. And like, here he was, the heavyweight. So like even now I watch it and like I used to be a really big wrestling mark back in those days. And a lot of the wrestlers used to know and recognize like who the marks were in the audience that they could play off of, that they could play their babyface roles and play their heel roles off of. And so we would get a lot of wrestlers playing off of us during the show, knowing that they could rely on us to give them the right reactions. And as a result, me and my circle of friends would get invited to hang out at like after show parties with the wrestlers when they went to like a local sports bar or whatever to get dinner after the shows. And so like I spent a lot of time hanging out with Horace the Psychopath and CM Punk and guys like that. And so it's, like I said, to see CM Punk in WWE still to me to this day is like bigger than life, because like that was just another dude.
Right. So obviously, children of the 80s, it forms a certain part of your life, and then we think of technology's changed. One of the cool things is why I reached out to John was because I know there's a lot of people there's a lot of technology out there to make really cool stuff. The issue is it's great to do it, but there's a learning curve. And sometimes you're by yourself. You don't know what to do. So the question becomes, how do you learn more? And that's where it's great to find people in a community that are doing something so you can learn from them and you can ask them questions, you can grow. And that's why we have you on, John, to talk about kind of like how I found you. You were big into being a Vikings fan, but you also wanted to grow a community, and you said, well, how can I do that? And all of a sudden you start doing giveaways with 3D printing stuff. And I'm like, who is this guy? And why is he doing this? Stuff is so cool. And so, that leads me to
it's drawn a lot of attention. I've been kind of overwhelmed.
Oh, absolutely. So before we get into that, how did you discover 3D printing?
So a few years ago, I bought an arcade one-up cabinet, and I bought an At Games Legend console system at about the same time. And the guy who I bought the At Games system from, it was the At Games Mini. So it was just the controller size and then a little like puck that you hook it up to. Excuse me. And I quickly realized that the At Games Legend Mini was the same size as my Arcade 1-Up controller panel. And my Arcade 1-Up had like 4 games on it. And my At Games Legend had like, I don't know, I bought it with like 5,000 games on it and then fell into another hole there. But so I really quickly started modifying arcade cab. There's the machine right there. So I really quickly started modifying Arcade 1-Up machines. I started by what I actually did was I took these 2 Legends controllers. So the one that I had didn't have the trackball in the middle. It just basically had one side of the controller that you see, but I had 2 controllers. So I took 2 empty Arcade 1-Up shells and I put 1 At Games Legend controller in each one and a monitor in each one. And then I hooked an HDMI splitter up to the At Games Legend console so that I could put the same image on the both monitors on the different consoles. And I built a head-to-head Mortal Kombat machine with the intent that you and I can sit down and play Mortal Kombat without bumping our elbows against each other. We each have our own machine, but we're playing the same game against each other still. And so that really evolved into, for a while, I really was running with this business concept of building arcades. You know, a lot of these like local companies charge you like $3,500 for an arcade cabinet. And the fact of the matter is I can build you an arcade cabinet for $800 that plays just as well and just as many games, and you'll have just as much fun, and I'll save you $2,700. So I started building a lot of arcade cabinets. And when I got now to the root of your question, when I got into 3D printing, I was at a stage where I was building a lot of cabinets at the time, and I was finding myself regularly running to Menards to pick up corner brackets and just different, you know, different things that I was getting in. The first time I went to Menards, I couldn't find anything, and now I can just like walk around the store, you know what I mean? But I used to spend hours just walking around the store and going, how can I fabricate this? What parts do I need to make this happen? And so once I started realizing the parts, I just got sick of making trips to Menards. And so I got a 3D printer. The whole idea was that I was just going to make like corner brackets for building my Arcade 1-Ups. Well, then I started realizing that I could build like dust protectors for the joystick and bezels for, you know what I mean? And it just like was like, oh, well, there's more to it than just saving 80 cents on an angle bracket, you know? And so part of what I was doing at the time was, like I said, I'm pretty big into pinball, and more specifically, I'm into video pinball. And there's a lot of people that play video pinball in the United Kingdom and in Australia. Yep. And there aren't a lot of people that build cabinets over there. And so these guys get stuck with these options where they buy a flat pack from somebody over here and pay more to have it shipped to them than they paid for the wood that they still have to do all the work to put together. And like, it can just be overwhelming as a beginner. And so I saw a problem. I was like, what can I do from Minnesota to help some dude in New Zealand play pinball? And so what I was working on as I was building cabinets, to preface this a little bit, one year for Thanksgiving, I was going to my mother-in-law's, and I was like, how do I bring my Arcade 1-Up with me without having to bring my whole cabinet? And so I realized that you could start taken Raspberry Pis or mini PCs and just put it right in the controller so that all of your hardware is in the control panel and all you need is an HDMI out and you can plug it into anything. And that really opened my mind to like, you know, there's think outside of the box. There's more to it than what we've been doing with arcade cabinets for the last 60 years, just because that's what the last guy did. And so, like I said, there's all these guys across the ocean that want to play pinball. And so as I was developing these arcade cabinets, I eventually came up with an 11-inch by 11-inch by about 8-inch wooden pinball machine that runs off a mini PC. It has a monitor built into it that you run an HDMI out to any TV. But it's still big, and it was a pain in the butt to, I mean, it's heavy. It's still, even if it fits in a 12 by 12 shipping cube, they don't like picking up heavy stuff, so they charge you for it. And so when I got into 3D printing and I started realizing there's all these other things that can be done, I transformed, like that was one of the first things I did, was I started working on transforming this wooden pinball machine into what I now call the pinball to go. And it's a 3D printable video pinball machine that now I don't even have to ship it. Like I offer it for free over Maker World. If you live somewhere and want to print out your own pinball machine, like I just want people to play pinball because I love it. You know what I mean? And so like I have it on Etsy. I sell it for a very minimal amount over what it costs to build it because I just want it to be accessible to people. Like I said, I saw a problem and I'm trying to fix it. And so that was like, that opened me up now to designing. Once I learned how to transform this existing idea into a 3D printing. And so I've been through all these different walks in life, and we were talking about this earlier too, but promotional items. So this is the pinball to go. So this runs off of a B-Link SER5 Max. It's a pretty decent size mini PC that doesn't have a video card. This is the minimum system that will get you into the world of video pinball. Now,
what does that run?
That's what I was about to say. Once you get this, I sell on my Etsy page, I think for $650 or $700. I can't remember, one of the two.
That's not bad.
I mean, like, it's like the prices come down a little bit, but when I originally priced it, it was like $350 for that B-Link. It's like another $50 for the monitor, another $50 for the buttons, the time that it takes to print it and program it and all that. Like, I'm selling the hardware for people to make this accessible, to open up the world of video pinball. You can pick this up and I'll ship it to you and you can set it all up, or as a courtesy, I will get the system running for you and throw a handful of games on there. And then I usually give you a link to a couple of YouTube videos on how to set it up from there to keep it going. But
so what do you print it on? Like, obviously you've got one at home.
So that is I print that on a Sovol SV08. It's almost a 12-inch by 12-inch bed. Specifically, the reason I got that, I was looking, once I got really into this, like I've really built up my printer robot crew to be specialized machines that do specialized things, and my SV08 is my large format machine.
So
the things that don't fit on the other machine are the things that go on there. And the funny thing is, when I bought that SV08, Sovol wasn't anywhere on my radar. And I had a friend that was just like, no, stop what you're doing. Just stop. John, just stop. Just go buy an SV08. And after him badgering me enough, I went and bought an SV08, and it is hands down.
What do you like about it, John?
It's for an experienced printer, it's a very easy to use. It's designed to be a, like, take it out of the, like, it's designed to be kind of like a Bamboo printer. Bamboo is known for being the, like, You don't have to know anything about printing. All you got to do is plug it in, download an app, and point your finger. So Sovol has taken the Core XY model and made a retail model of this is a printer that people were essentially building on their own for a few years and perfected. Like I said, I was really looking for something with a 350 by 350 bed, and he pointed that out to me. And it's ease of use combined with it makes the cleanest prints of any machine. So all of my bamboos are bed slingers. The head moves one way and the bed moves the other way.
Right. That was my next question for you. Is that a bed slinger?
That is not that. So that's a Core XY. So the bed stays stable. The print head moves left and right and forward and back, and then the whole print head raises. So you'll see two different versions of Core XY printers. Okay. One, either the level of the print head is stationary and the bed comes down, or the bed is stationary and the head comes up. So the Sovol SV08, the bed is stationary. And that was one of the things that I was looking for too, is so I started on the Ender 3 style of printers. And those are bed slingers, but they're very slow. They're for very patient people, but they're a great way to learn the fundamentals of 3D printing. They will make you a better 3D printer. But the first time that I
just a quick question. When you went with that printer, do you go single color or do you have a multicolor printer?
I'm going to pause this right now, gentlemen, because there's people that don't even know what you're talking about. So I would rather say that is more of a deep discussion. I would say, let's do the 50,000 foot view. How does 3D printing work? You know, what do you need to do it? Because that's something I think a lot of people are like, I want to learn about it rather than get thrown in the deep end. So,
I think that's one of the things I was kind of trying to touch on there too, is the older models, the slower bed slinger, they require a little more patience,
so
but you'll learn the fundamentals of printing. You'll learn you'll learn why layers are the height they are, why the head moves the distance that it does from the bed, how to level a bed manually, like stuff like that. And where that really helps is even if you get into the modern era of printers where, like I said, you pull it out of the box, you plug it in, you download an app. But if something goes wrong, the people who learned how to print on these modern printers, when something goes wrong, typically they don't know what to do. They're just like, it isn't working. And that's where they're done. So right now you can jump on Facebook Marketplace and you can get an old Ender 3 V2 or an old Ender 3 V3 for like $75 to $100.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I would recommend to anybody who's just learning about 3D printing or interested in getting into 3D printing, number one, it's a low risk. I mean, if you don't have $100 to throw at something to be a new hobby, that's probably not a good hobby for you anyways, you know what I mean? So $100 is a good entry point. And like I said, it's a much more hands-on style of printing where you learn cause and effect of the printing fundamentals. Then once you've learned on an old Ender 3 and how it works, you get into the $300 to $500 neighborhood, and they can't release printers fast enough in that price range right now. And they're all about how fast do they move, how quick can you set it up, how much does that printer know, how much AI does it use to detect problems for you and stuff like that. But you know, if you don't know the background, you're still just pulling that low-hanging fruit.
It's like buying a car versus being a mechanic, right? If a car breaks down, if you're not a mechanic, you probably aren't going to be able to fix it unless you take the time. And
John, the other part that I've seen that's cool is multi-material and incorporating multi-material into your 3D prints. For you, I've looked at some of your photos. particularly Viking focused, multicolor, do you do multicolor or do you stand and paint?
So I've learned a lot of the sanding and painting. The funny thing is you start off with this, and this is a learning curve for everyone too. You start off with this impression that you're going to print multicolor objects, and it's going to be, click a button and come back into the back room and pull it off the printer. And people don't realize, number one, how much longer it takes to print in multicolor, and number two, how much more product is used for multicolor printing. There's ways to get around that, and now we're coming into yet another era of printers where, so what happens with most multicolor prints is when it gets done with one color, it ejects what's left of that color and then starts a new color. And so you always get this constant purge every time that there's a color change at every one of 4,000 layers. Mm-hmm. And so that adds up quickly. There's a new era of printers coming out where they have multiple printer heads, and each color runs through its own head, so you don't have to constantly be purging different colors or different filament types. And that's starting to become an attainable, like, budget is always a thing for most people in 2025. And that's the next era that's really starting to become budget friendly for consumers, is multi-head printers. But like what you're looking at here, these are multi-layered prints that you can do with any single head printer that isn't multicolor capable. Here's the thing, every printer is multicolor capable. It's just whether or not your printer changes the colors or you change the colors. So like a lot of times what you can do is you can print that black layer, and then when that black layer is done, you put all the white colors on top of it, and you leave a hole for all the purple colors, and then you do all the purple colors, and then you do all the yellow colors. So you just manually change out that filament a couple times during a print to get that layered effect. And so that's more cost effective. It's more time effective. And you quickly start learning that, like I said, there's specialized printers for specialized needs. But most of the time that you do multicolor prints, the most efficient way of doing it is you print out all the brown pieces and then all the white pieces and all the black pieces, and then you glue them all together and you fill them all in and you sand them all up and you paint them all out. So I don't know, Todd, if you can find one of the cane masks, but that's
let me see if I can find that. So
that's
if you're listening to the podcast, I would highly recommend you watch the YouTube, because we are showing a lot of the creations. It'll make more sense when you see it. And I'm going to find some of John's things that he does. He has a lot of things out there. So I will find it. Keep talking.
But that's a great example of you quickly learn that while multicolor printing seems very attractive and tech savvy, good old-fashioned elbow grease and paint is still the most efficient way of going at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the advantages really of 3D printing, and especially of the type of business model that I'm trying to do. Like, we can approach a model where, like, I help print it out for you, and then if you don't have that post-production skill, like that's a lot of what I've been learning. Like, I'm a pretty tech savvy guy. It didn't take me long to pick up 3D printing, but I'm not a very hand artsy guy. I've never been a painter or a drawer or anything like that. So this whole world of post-production is new to me. And even in just like the close to 2 years that I've been doing this now, like, the amount of improvement that I can see in what I've learned in post-production has been the biggest difference. But so, like, from the business model approach, if you want to save a couple bucks, we print something out raw, and you take it home and you paint it in your spare time and you do the work. And if you don't have that skill, we'll print something raw, and then we can talk about how I can paint it for you and how I can do some of these post-production techniques. And I think it helps open it up too. Like, Sometimes you look at some of these handcrafted items that other people make and you go, whoa, $180, I make that myself. But then by the time that you go out and you buy a bunch of tools and you build something and you fail and you throw it in the garbage, and you build something and you fail and you throw it in the garbage, and you build something and you finally learned a new technique, and then you reapproach and reevaluate what your original goals, like, boy, you'd have been better off just spending $180 with a professional and just giving someone else who's taken the time and precedence to learn those. And so that's there for everybody. Like I said, you want to save a buck and you're handy with painting, we'll print out some raw masks and you go home and decorate them up. And if you love cane and you can't paint, I'll paint a cane mask for you.
John,
so this is an example of printing multicolored filaments and bringing them together into a final piece.
So as an expert, how did you go about building this? Like, I'm a newbie to 3D printing. You've got a lot of intricate details in this photo. How did you build it? Like, what was the origin of it?
Going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, aside from everything else I did in the 80s, I played a lot of Legos.
But like, you've got the shoulder and you've got fins. I mean, this is a very beautiful and ornate Skull Vikings look. How did you do it?
A lot of, like I said, a lot of Legos, a lot of, like, remember the old, like, tester models?
Yep.
Like airplanes and cars, and like I did a lot of that stuff. Remember, even like G.I. Joe and He-Man toys. When we were kids, you used to go and get the vacuum formed parts that were on a card that you had to like peel the parts out of the card and put them, you know what I mean? So it's like, even when you were building the Cobra Commander station, you had to pull out all the black pieces of plastic and all the red pieces of plastic and all the white pieces of plastic and put them together. And that's really like what we're doing. You start with a larger concept and you just start reverse engineering it backwards. I mean, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. If there's existing models out there that we can have either been perfected, that have public, here's the thing with the way that I'm approaching printing, you're still the end user. So you're the one who is subject to the copyright. You're the one who can use that item for personal use. You're the one who can use that item for commercial use per whatever the agreement was between you and that model creator. So one of the things that I'll teach people, just real quickly, one of the things that I'll teach people that are interested in this process and are looking for ways to get into 3D modeling is ways to search the existing 3D modeling world. There's a website that I really recommend to people called Yeggi, Yeggi. And Yeggi is essentially like Google for 3D modeling. So you can go there and you can say, I want to be the Red Ranger. And you can look up Red Ranger cosplay. And you can look at how many people have already walked down this road. And then YouTube has Fusion 360 and Blender and Tinkercad and all these videos. So now you can take these if you find a shredder model that you want to be shredder and it doesn't quite meet your satisfactions, a lot of these models, part of 3D printing culture is that most of these models also have remix rights where you can come in and you can make edits and change it as long as you credit it to the original. So like I said, it all comes down to the original copyrights, but you can come in and start saying, okay, well, I want the points to be a little longer, or I want this to be a different shape or a different location. And you start learning that. And it's, you don't reinvent the wheel when you don't have to. Henry Ford invented the car. The people that are making cars today took the knowledge that he gave us and built upon it. And so we approach 3D printing in the same type of way. And the community is very open sourced and sharing in
Yep.
in that manner.
So you talked about your passion for pinball and gaming. How do you blend your creative, like your Vikings 3D prints are amazing. How do you blend your fandom with your creative talent? Because like the pictures that we saw that Todd brought up, where it was like a Viking shredder, where do you like bring that all together? Because it's really amazing that you have a Viking shredder. How did that all come about?
It's been an evolution. I mean, if you take a look at the picture that we just had there versus the most recent one, you'll see like where I've added horns. I put some cutouts in the new one. You know, you take something that works, you put it out in front of people, and sometimes you find out that it's a success, and sometimes you find out that you're the only one who got it, and you take it back and you reapproach it, you know. So it's, I think one of the things that, like with this, as you start learning designing, you know, like that's a perfect example of what I was saying. Like that shredder outfit, I didn't design that, but it didn't start out like that either. This was a multi-part that I assembled a lot of these inside of other programs, so that instead of printing them and gluing them and sanding them, I could print them in whole parts, because I have a larger format printer than most people have access to. You know, and like I said, you take it out there, you see what works, you make changes. That's one of the nice things about 3D printing, is that it's constantly evolving. You know, you find what works, and you can change it readily. It brings the entire manufacturing process that used to be, like I said, with like G.I. Joe toys. You took the parts that they gave you, and the only thing you can do with it is make the tank that thing makes. But now you can take those parts and you can say, well, how can I approach these parts from a different perspective? And that's, like I had mentioned earlier, that's one thing I'm always trying to like come at things with an outside of the box approach. Just because we built arcades the same way for 60 years before I started building arcades doesn't mean we have to keep building them that way. Like, we used to make them 6 feet tall because they needed to be that big to fit all the hardware inside for you to play it. But now I can put 12,000 games in a box that I can ship anywhere around the world for $100.
Wow. So what's the next thing for you? Like, where's your next set of visions? Because the tech is changing in terms of 3D printing. Where do you want it to go? I mean, what's your big dream?
My big dream, honestly, I like Kinko's. Like, I want to have big dream. Like, if you want to talk big dream, I'd like to have a store in Minneapolis, a store in St. Paul, a store in St. Cloud, a store in Rochester. I just want to make it accessible to every, like, you see how excited and geeky I get about, like, I just bought this to print angle brackets. Like, I just wanted to make it easier to put corners together. And it's opened up this whole new world and way of thinking about accessibility of products. You know, sometimes I can print something for the same price, or maybe even cheaper, hopefully, than I can order something. But even like, we're lucky to live in a spot where you can order stuff on Amazon and get it the same day. I can still sometimes print stuff faster than that. I can say, I want this. You've seen these Sponge Daddy brush kitchen sponges, and they've got a little happy face in them. Well, I'm like kind of I don't like my sponge sitting around. I found a Sponge Daddy brush holder that's like two black dowels and a black smiley face, and you put the Sponge Daddy in it, and it now turns it into like this nice little yellow smiley face. You know what I mean? And so it's like, but it took me like 45 minutes to print that out. I couldn't have ran to the store, walked around the store for 15 minutes, stood in line, drove back to the store, and had that into my house in that amount of time. So it's like,
I'll give you, John, I'll give you an example.
You can turn something in your brain into something tangible, sometimes in a matter of minutes.
My buddy just printed a replacement seat for his road bike. He's using a PS1, I believe, from Bamboo. It's a multi-material. It's fascinating. And I am really intrigued about where you've taken this. It's so exciting. So
I haven't got into it yet. One of the things that I really look forward to in this business model is people bringing me products and files and images of things that I wouldn't have thought of on my own.
Where are you going next, John? What's your vision?
Well, I mean, like I said, just making it accessible to other people, trying to stay with the curve of the industry so that as a consumer, you don't need to take the chances, invest in something that like we've all heard a ton of stories too about like, yeah, I bought a printer and it's been sitting in my basement and I turned it on 3 times in the last 2 years. A lot of people don't want to take that chance for something that, just to build on what you were just going to say, here's another little niche that's really developed for 3D printing with carbon fiber filaments and ABS filaments. I'm involved in a few groups. I haven't done any of this printing myself yet, but I'm involved in a few groups of people that print out of stock car parts.
My uncle had a 39 Buick, and I printed the handle for the ball or the wheel for the roll down
dashboard bezels, like, mirror holders, like things that you can't just go buy unless you can find another 74 Roadrunner sitting around somewhere, but you can do a replacement with. Same thing, like I play in some pinball leagues, and I always tell the guys that run these, I'm like, if that bird toy bouncy springy thing ever breaks, like there's a ton of 3D printer pinball enthusiast groups, and there's probably somebody out there who's made a model for your broken pinball toy that we can print it and replace it quicker than you can find a 1974 Elton John machine.
Oh yeah,
Captain Fantastic. And, you know what I mean?
%.
So, and I think that's like that. There's just so many different directions once you get into this world of 3D printing. Like I'm constantly blown away at how many hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions, of models that there are out there. Any niche that you can think of that people have, there's people 3D printing something to go with that niche. You're into D&D, there's people making dice rollers. You're into classic cars, there's people making car parts. Like there's no end.
The window roller.
And it gets bigger every day. That's the thing. Like it's huge, and it just
and with
the
materials you go to now.
Totally.
Any convention you go to now, like I went to 20 Cities Con, there were so many vendors, and it's kind of cool because you do see a lot of the same things, but then you see the things that are just amazing. There was this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're coming out of the sewer, and there were various sizes of it, and there was this Predator hand holding up like a skull, and I'm like, that's amazing. It's just,
and if you get
people going with it,
even if you get further, you can actually move pieces. It's truly amazing. And John, I can't thank you enough for this intro into 3D printing. Todd, I would love to have John back to go into more detail around filaments. What filaments do you use? How do you work to build such an ornate shredder Viking mask? What goes into that? I really think that would be of value to our audience. Hopefully, we can do that.
I'm all about it. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm very motivated by community building, sharing knowledge, like just helping other people get the infection. So that sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's going to be part of the journey of MakerCast, because there's going to be more broader introductions, and then I think the opportunity becomes the MakerCast 101, and it becomes 3D printing 101. It's more of like all the questions you're free to ask. If people have questions, they can, and maybe do that live where people have questions, we answer it live. So there's a lot of places to go, and I think a lot of opportunities to share the knowledge and see who's out there. And maybe you learn something away, John, as well. And Sean, you learn something from somebody else. But before we go, I have 2 more questions. This one's hopefully easy. What's the most interesting thing you've made, John?
I mean, right now, it's hard for me to not say the shredder costume. There's been I'm on the 4th evolution of that. I started off, honestly, doing a silver and chrome shredder costume, and while I was working on that, I found the cane mask model, and I've always, like I said, I've always been a wrestling fan, and that was one of my favorite characters, was like that late 90s Kane. And so in the middle of Shredder, I stopped the Shredder, worked on the Kane mask. I made a red and black Kane mask. And then as soon as I was done with it, I mean, like, as soon as I was done with it, I was like, boy, if we made that purple and yellow, that would just scream Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where I started with the silver and chrome. So that's going into post-production, that's a graphite rub that I was doing for the chrome versus a chrome paint that I was doing for the silver. And you learn about those types of things. Like, you don't just paint something silver, it takes more work than that. But so I was in the middle of, and this was part of the Peacemaker. I'm big on that. Was where I was
going through these things. There's just so many cool ones in here that I like.
But so when I created those 2 masks right there, those Kane masks, I hit the brakes on the shredder, and I was like, oh, nobody's ever done that. And I'll tell you what's so fun. Yeah. What's so fun. This is where I knew I really hit a gold. I had a lot of people when I started doing the Kane masks that were like, oh, I want one. And I couldn't make them fast enough when I started making them. And then, like I said, while I was making those, the shredder thing evolved into the skull shredder type of deal for me while I was doing these Kane masks. And so I went down to the stadium before the game, and, it was just, I had a couple extra masks and was hustling masks. And there were a lot of people that saw the Kane masks and were like, wow, those are cool. But there were way more people that were like, Shredder, dude, oh my God.
Yeah, it's the matchup, right?
And people that were like, I've seen 100 Mandalorians of every team color in every stadium. And people are like, I've never seen anybody do a Shredder before. And so it's like, I get the football geeks obviously see that and they're like, oh, it's original and it's cool and it's fun and yeah. But then I get like the nostalgia fans that are just like, oh my God, dude, you're Shredder. And so I walk around before the games, and people, like, to see their eyes light up when they see me is worth it all in that moment. Yeah. And then from there, like, so many people pull me aside and ask for pictures. Like we saw that, like, even the Ravens fan was like, dude, I need a picture of that because that's just cool. You know what I mean? Like, he's not there to celebrate the Vikings, but he sure loved it. So it's like, I just, why do you not want to spread that? Whether it's spreading the infection of the Vikings, spreading the affection of 80s nostalgia to people, like, even seeing little kids nowadays, they still know who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are. Oh, they get excited. Yeah. These guys, these are the Skull Boys. They showed me a logo, and 2 days later we were printing their logo into their own Skull Boys spirit chain. So, we can take, that's what I was saying, we can take an idea and we can make it a tangible thing, and that's happening in 2025 faster than it ever has before.
It's amazing.
So, one last question for you, John. If you're a new person just getting in, I know you talked about on Facebook you could get into a printer for $100 used. What printer do you recommend for the new user? Easy to set up, easy to just drop in and go.
For the drop in and go, honestly, my recommendation is for the Bamboo A1 or the A1 Mini, depending on your size and needs. I think a lot of people start off with an A1 Mini in the Bamboo world and then want something bigger, and then realize, like I was saying, when you're doing multicolor stuff, most of the time you're going to print out each color individually and assemble them later. And so where you really need the multicolor is for the smaller stuff that you don't want to assemble. And so what I was saying there is, I think a lot of people start off with an A1 Mini, print a few things in color and go, oh, I should have went bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go get a bigger printer, realize how much waste a giant multicolor print makes, and then they never want to make a giant multicolor print. They want to go back to printing things individual and post-process assembling. Okay. And so to me, I think there's two things to look at. There's the A1. The A1 and the A1 Mini are both on sale right now for the next couple of weeks at like 40% off of retail.
Yeah,
I just picked up 2 A1s today, refurbished at Micro Center for $249 a piece. So I got 2 A1s for under $500.
So that's what I was going to say. Big props to Micro Center. If you have one in your community,
we are so lucky.
Amazing.
Okay, John, one really quick question. Sorry, Todd. If I wanted to get it in encased multicolor, what would you go with?
If I was going to recommend an encased multicolor, essentially the budget conscious wise, the P1S is probably the way to go with Bamboo. It's essentially the A1, but in a Core XY format instead of the bed slinger format.
So it's not the $1,500 one.
No, the H2D is
that one you might need to put a second mortgage on the house for, but give it a couple of years.
Yep.
The one thing I'll say, they really stuck a lot of technology into with the H2D, putting laser engraving into the 3D printing process. But for anybody who's done any laser engraving, it makes a lot of waste and it makes a lot of maintenance for keeping your machine well maintained and up to date. A lot of users post-release have said it's still a better idea to keep your laser cutter and your 3D printer separate. And, same thing with like a CNC. I mean, they're all the same kind of machine.
Very cool.
Thank you.
If you do have a Micro Center or someone that does sell 3D printers, John makes a great point. They often have open box. Obviously, make sure they still have a warranty. Something goes wrong, you don't want something that's broken, but they're pretty good. Micro Center has great people there too. If you have questions, you can ask them when you're there, because it's kind of overwhelming. You see the amount of filament and all this stuff. So
today I learned, this was very interesting. Best Buy sells Bamboo Labs printers.
Yes,
Best Buy has the same retail price points as Bamboo Labs has on their website right now. So you can go get an A1 at Bamboo Labs for $199 today, or you can get it at Best Buy for $199 today. The difference is, and this is what I just learned today, you can DoorDash the printer from Best Buy. You can go on Best Buy and they will send that printer to you with a DoorDash driver, and you can get that printer as quick as the DoorDash driver can run down to Best Buy and pick it up for you. So if you want to get into 3D printing, Bamboo Labs are on sale right now, and you can have one almost by the time this episode is done.
So make your Christmas lists. Maybe Skull Claus will bring one to you down the chimney. And then before that, John, the reason I'm so excited for you because you're a Vikings fan, which means you're a great person, but then you do all this great stuff to represent your fandom with that. And not only that, you do awesome giveaways. So tell people that, if they want to join in and maybe potentially win something or just join part of this community, how will people do that?
Well, right now, for at least for the rest of the season, and I want to keep it going beyond the season, probably not weekly beyond the season, but one of the things that I've really tried to do with 3D printing is come up with ways, like we saw with the Shredder and Kane, but like that axe, for instance, wasn't a purple and yellow axe when I found the original model, but I looked at that and I thought, holy buckets, with that lacing on the front of it, if we made it purple and yellow, you wouldn't even have to put a Vikings logo on it for people to know that you're a Vikings fan. You know what I mean? And so that's like I said, that's the outside of the box approach.
Battle Axe, which is amazing, one of my favorite games. And, Mjolnir's got to be coming along sometime, I assume, John?
There, honestly, the list.
Yes. John, I need a Captain America.
Like especially after I've taken off these blinders, the list of things that I look at and go, oh my God, if that was purple and gold.
Too many ideas.
Right. Yeah, Lord of the Rings, wrestling, comic books, like boy, you just take some of this stuff and give it a color thing. And it I often tell people I will do any one of the 31 NFL team colors. But I try to avoid.
You did a Bills mask of Kane mask.
Yes,
cool.
Yes. Yeah. But I try to avoid green and gold.
Absolutely. And just to break your heart, John, Sean is also a Chiefs fan. It's very odd. They beat us in a Super Bowl.
So we were talking a little bit before the show, but like my AFC attraction during some of my formative Vikings years was the Raiders, and so boy, the Chiefs. That's like kind of the Packers of the AFC West.
Yes. So follow John on, follow Skoladiator.
Follow the Skoladiator. That's a great way to find me and fall down the wormhole with me.
Yeah. And by the way, all of this stuff will be in the notes of the show and on the podcast. This will go up on our website. We'll share it out for everyone. And then if John, I'll probably take some notes of some of the things you recommended that I can also share as well. And obviously people can then check in with you if they have questions. And as Sean mentioned,
I encourage it. Look me up on Facebook and reach out. I'm kind of friendly.
Very friendly. We just met today, folks, by the way. So we hit it off immediately. It's been amazing. I was worried if John might not talk enough. Obviously, that wasn't a problem. And
did he get me going?
Absolutely.
Really quickly, John, thank you. This has been an educational experience for me. Can't thank you enough. Really appreciate the fact that you took the time to talk with us for a good 2 hours. And thank you again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Folks, remember, you may not be a maker today, but tomorrow is another day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.